Mental strength is not the absence of weakness, it is the quiet decision to rise above it, the inner agreement to stop being pulled by impulses, emotions, and distractions, and to start being guided by clarity, discipline, and purpose. Mental strength is not built in dramatic moments. It is built in small private choices repeated again and again until the mind grows into something calm, steady, and deeply grounded. The journey begins with the understanding that everything originates from the inner world long before action appears on the outside. The mind rehearses it internally. The mind creates the conditions that make it possible, and the identity gives it meaning. Every strength developed begins in thought, and every weakness tolerated also begins in thought. The inner world is the architect. The external world simply reflects its design. The first stage of becoming mentally strong begins with mastering inner dialogue, that constant voice inside the mind, the one that comments, analyzes, judges, questions, doubts, encourages, or discourages. Every person carries a voice within, and that voice becomes the soundtrack of their life. The problem is that most people never learn to speak to themselves in a way that builds strength. They simply repeat the patterns given to them by the past, by fear, by insecurity, or by habit. Mental strength emerges when the inner voice becomes a deliberate instrument, rather than an automatic reaction. It begins when the mind learns to observe its own thoughts, rather than becoming controlled by them. The moment the mind becomes aware of its patterns, a gap forms between thought and identity. In that gap lies power, the power to challenge old beliefs, the power to question old narratives, the power to choose a better direction. When the mind says you are not capable, mental strength responds with self-awareness and says this is not a fact, it is a thought. When the mind says you always fail, mental strength responds with perspective and says failure is a moment, not a label. When the mind says you should quit, mental strength asks, is this emotion or is this truth? This continuous refinement of inner dialogue becomes the foundation of a strong mind. The inner voice shifts from critic to guide, from saboteur to ally, from obstacle to support. The thoughts become clear, steady, and rooted in purpose. The person no longer fights against themselves internally, but moves in harmony with who they are. Becoming a united mind is a powerful mind. The second stage of mental strength forms through emotional discipline, the ability to feel deeply while still acting intentionally. Emotional discipline is not suppression, but stewardship. It is the art of navigating emotion without drowning in it. Emotion has power, but it gains authority only when the mind surrenders decision-making to feeling. Emotional discipline is reclaiming that authority. It is understanding that feeling overwhelmed does not require reacting impulsively. Feeling afraid does not require retreating. Feeling sad does not require collapsing. Emotional discipline teaches the mind to create space between emotion and action, and in that space the individual chooses rather than reacts. A mentally strong person does not deny emotion, they simply refuse to let emotion hijack their direction. They observe the rise of feeling, they acknowledge it, they allow it to pass through, and then they choose their behavior with clarity, not impulse. Emotions become information rather than commands. This emotional distance creates stability. The highs do not sweep the person into chaos, the lows do not trap them in despair. The storms may appear, but they no longer dictate the course. The person becomes calm, even when the world feels unsettled. They become centered, even when circumstances become heavy. Emotional discipline creates the kind of strength that remains steady in moments when others fall apart. The third stage of mental strength is built through the discipline of doing hard things daily, not dramatic things, not impossible things, but consistently challenging things that stretch the mind and expand its tolerance for discomfort. The mind grows stronger when resistance becomes familiar, not frightening when difficulty becomes training, not punishment when discomfort becomes a teacher, not an enemy. Every time a difficult action is taken, the mind whispers a new message, one of capability, one of resilience, one of readiness. Each repetition becomes a vote for strength. Each small challenge becomes a stepping stone into a more powerful identity. Mental strength grows in small moments, waking up when comfort invites more sleep, speaking the truth when silence feels easier, practicing patience, When frustration tries to take over working toward a goal, even when motivation has faded, returning to purpose even when distraction pulls, these small moments accumulate, forming a mind that no longer collapses at the presence of challenge, but rises with it. The fourth stage of mental strength is loyalty to long-term vision over short-term feelings. Feelings change rapidly, they shift with mood, environment, and circumstance, but vision remains steady. Mental strength means aligning decisions with what truly matters, not with what temporarily feels good, short-term feelings. Pull the individual toward distraction, temptation, or ease, but long-term vision pulls them toward purpose, depth, and fulfillment. A mentally strong person does not base their actions on momentary emotion. They base them on meaningful direction. They continue, even when motivation fades. They remain focused even when excitement diminishes. They maintain effort even when results are not immediate. They understand that the future is shaped by consistency, not by convenience, by discipline, not by inspiration, by commitment, not by mood. The strongest minds are not the ones who feel motivated most often. They are the ones who act with intention even when motivation is absent. Long-term vision becomes the anchor that stabilizes every decision, and every choice becomes a brick in the foundation of the future they are building. The fifth stage of mental strength comes from protecting energy and environment. The mind is shaped by what surrounds it. It reflects the influences it absorbs. It grows or weakens based on the company it keeps, the content it consumes, the environments it occupies, and the boundaries it enforces. Protecting energy means stepping away from noise and closer to clarity. It means choosing people who uplift rather than drain, choosing activities that nourish rather than distract, choosing boundaries that protect rather than restrict. The environment either fuels mental strength or corrodes it, and the individual must choose carefully. When energy is guarded, the mind becomes clearer, decisions become easier, and emotional balance becomes stronger. The person no longer wastes effort on battles that do not matter or on relationships that drain their inner power. They learn that time, attention, and emotional space are investments that require wise distribution. Mental strength grows rapidly when the environment supports the direction of growth. These five pillars work together, forming the architecture of a mind that is able to withstand challenge, navigate emotion, pursue purpose, and remain grounded regardless of circumstances. Mental strength is not loud. It does not need attention or applause. It expresses itself in calmness, in clarity, in consistency, in the quiet certainty that no matter what happens, the mind will remain steady. Mental strength reaches its highest expression when the mind is no longer driven by impulse, but guided by intention. When emotions no longer overpower clarity, but instead become part of the wisdom that shapes it. When challenges no longer threaten identity, but instead reveal capacity, and when the inner world no longer collapses under pressure, but stands centered, steady, and unshaken. True strength is not loud. It does not demand attention or validation. It appears quietly in the choices no one sees, in the discipline maintained without applause, in the persistence shown when motivation has faded, and in the commitment to rise again, no matter how many times life asks for it. Mental strength is a private victory long before it ever becomes a public one. As the journey deepens, a powerful realization emerges that strength is not built in a single moment. It is built through thousands of small decisions: to stay focused when the mind wanders, to stay patient when impatience rises, to stay disciplined when comfort whispers, to stay committed when doubt appears, and to stay loyal to a vision that feels bigger than the present moment. Mental strength becomes a way of living, a way of thinking, a way of carrying oneself through the world with intention and purpose. It becomes a quiet confidence that does not need to prove anything. It simply moves forward with clarity because it knows what it stands for and what it is becoming. With time, the mind begins to feel lighter, choices become clearer, emotions feel less overwhelming, setbacks feel less defining, and the future feels closer. Mental strength creates a sense of inner certainty that no matter what lies ahead, the individual is capable of facing it, growing from it, and rising beyond it. This is the transformation, the point where the inner world aligns with the strength that has been building day by day, the point where the person no longer searches for power outside themselves, because they have discovered the greatest source of power within. They have learned To guide their thoughts, they have learned to direct their emotions. They have embraced difficulty as a teacher they have chosen, vision over impulse, and they have protected their energy as a sacred resource. And now the path forward becomes clearer, not easier, but clearer. Mental strength does not remove obstacles, but it reshapes the way they are approached. Instead of avoiding challenge, the mind moves toward it instead of hiding. From growth, the heart opens to it instead of collapsing under pressure. The spirit steadies itself and rises. Mental strength becomes the silent companion that carries the individual through every chapter of life. As this journey closes and the final words settle into the mind, one truth remains: the mind you strengthen becomes the life you create, and the strength you build within becomes the strength that shapes everything around you. Continue to refine it, continue to grow it, and continue to rise into the version of yourself that this world has not yet seen. This concludes the extended segment on becoming mentally strong through awareness, discipline, resilience, and purpose. If this message has guided you, inspired you, or supported your growth, remember to stay connected to the journey ahead. Subscribe for more.